Hello and welcome to UCL Centre for Artificial Intelligence 15-minute meet series, exploring all things AI. I'm joined today by Pontus Stenetorp, who is the head of the NLP research group at UCL. So I understand that you're spending the lockdown period in Japan. Maybe you could tell us a bit about how things are going in Japan for you.
Well, that's a tricky one. If I ever write a book on how to be productive during lockdown, one of them will involve don't have a 9-month-old daughter. Now things are fine. From what I understand so far in Japan, and pardon for the share, by the way, it's a bit squeaky. From what I understand in Japan, the PCR checks are not that frequent, which means that we actually don't really know how bad things are. But it looks like Japan is doing one heck of a lot better than pretty much most other places, except for maybe, I think Singapore and South Korea has a better track record so far. So things are stable here. And I'm very thankful to be able to hide in my, my wife's sister's old room that was used for storage and has now been turned into an office. So I am reasonably productive here. I get a good set of hours every day, but I have to run upstairs and downstairs and change diapers occasionally.
One of the things we're asking is what challenges and opportunities has the lockdown presented, either for yourself or for AI research in general?
Sheesh. I think the opportunities are few and far between, to be entirely honest. One of the nice things I've seen is that there were a lot of members of the community that had a little bit of time on their hands and also some expertise already. So I'm talking primarily now about the natural language processing community. On their hand, when it came to processing biomedical data, so biomedical text, for example, they came up very quickly with new search tools. They started doing some sort of text mining. So text mining is when you take essentially unstructured text, which is, well, I guess most common people would call text, and turn it into some sort of structured format where you can say like, oh, well, this virus here was interacting with this specific thing here, et cetera, et cetera. So text in, structure things out, and started working on that. Now, I'm not entirely sure how much of an impact that will be, but it was heartwarming to see. I wish I would have had that much time on my hands, but yeah, I was stuck in family and flying between countries when this originally hit. Challenges wise, it's difficult to keep together a research group at the best of times. And one of the nice things about the NLP research group has always been that we have this more, I don't know how to say, we're fairly big, and we're also fairly tight in terms of we tend to have lunch together. We tend to have our weekly meetings, etc., etc. So there's always strong interaction. Now, maintaining that during lockdown has proven difficult, although we're doing fairly well. I would say, given the circumstances, I really owe it to one of my postdocs for doing that. My biggest challenge, I guess, here is being in UTC +9, which means that I have pretty much a 2-hour slot every single day when I can do my phone calls, and everything else is either dedicated to baby time or it's the middle of the night or supremely early morning. And I don't think a single one of my PhD students is an early riser. But we're doing well, but I'm looking forward to getting the team back together again. Even though I don't think that things will be normal in September, but I'm hoping they will be as normal as possible at least. But that is sadly not up to us.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting hearing about the challenges of the time difference. I guess most people in lockdown being in the same country don't necessarily have encountered thus far. So we talked about
the best part about it is the fact that you're +9, and I don't think a lot of people understand exactly what that means. Yeah. Imagine it essentially means when you go to bed, I go up.
Yes.
When you get up and go to work, it means I'm off work. And when I go to bed, you have your spare time, right? So the best actually part is having a video call with someone in California, because then everyone is on offset of roughly 8 hours. So someone will be in the middle of the night, and I had multiple of those calls. So yeah, it's tough. But yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. Please go.
No worries at all. No. So we touched a bit there on the NLP group, which you head up. Maybe you could tell us a bit about your academic journey to date and how your career has progressed.
Well, I guess I am among the youngest in the AI Centre. I don't know. Not that I've think much about age. I think mostly about academic seniority. I started out, I guess, I was always into computers. There's no question about that. And I think a lot of us at the AI Centre are similar. But I wanted to be a games programmer. So I sent an email, I think it was around 2000, to Rareware, which is actually based in the UK. And at the time was, I think Nintendo had a majority share in them. And I actually got a response because I asked them the question, what do you need to do in order to join? And I got a response from one of their software engineers, and they responded. And then I was set on going to university, and I just checked the best university in Sweden for this, and it was KTH in Stockholm. And I went, and I thought I would be a games programmer. Turns out I actually got proper scientific education when I came to KTH, and I got really deep into complexity theory, which was my favorite thing at the time. I never really got that good at it. So when time came for me to choose a dissertation topic, I actually went for natural language processing, because that was the only class where I had some sort of intuition in terms of what would be a cool research project. And I then went to Japan to carry out the project, and I joined the Tsuji laboratory at the University of Tokyo for an exchange year, and quickly discovered that being in a group of 40 people doing research is a lot more exciting than being in a group of 2 or 3 people. So I asked Professor Tsuji at the time, I said, what will it take for me to be allowed to join for a PhD? And he said, oh, you have to take the entrance exam. Well, the entrance exam at the University of Tokyo is among the most challenging in the world and is fairly infamous. But I locked myself in a room and I passed. I got lucky in particular because I got a lot of stats questions, which was something that I understood, as opposed to robotics questions, which I would have fluked entirely. And then I got in and I did my PhD there. And I then got one of these, and this was like old school AI kind of stuff. Well, okay, not the really old school, old school statistical AI. Back then, old school AI would have been more along the lines of rules. And I was never really into robots. I wanted to think about this cognition and deeper kinds of questions. And towards the end of my PhD, I applied for this government funded thing from in Japan, which will allow you to do almost whatever you wanted for about 2 years. And I got it. And in that time period, I had hooked onto this thing called deep learning. And I hadn't really hooked onto it because I was some sort of big connectionist. I believe it needs to simulate the human brain, and then all of a sudden, boom, intelligence happens, like that kind of thing. It was more that I had been working a lot in semantics. And we also ended up with these things which are called ontologies. And ontologies are manually curated, so created by humans. And you have relationships. You say something like, apple grows on tree, has color red, also has color yellow, etc., etc. So, and dealing with these ontologies is fine usually when you have a single one, but then you need to map between them. And in particular, in domains like the biomedical domain, when I say DNA, you might say protein. And I ended up in these situations where I needed to map essentially knowledge between these big ontologies, and it got me fairly exhausted in terms of having minute differences in opinion causing me hours and days and weeks of work. So when I saw this wonderful tutorial on distributional semantics, the idea that instead of you manually specifying the semantics that you want to capture for each and every single entity, it could be a noun or a verb or whatever you want, you capture it from data. And I fell in love with the idea. I did a couple of papers on it, and then I asked the question: how do you put these things together? Then, so like Apple is now this 100-dimensional sequence of numbers, and tree is another 100-dimensional sequence of numbers. How do I put these things together? Like, how do I make apple tree out of apple and tree? Okay? And I looked at the literature, and everything that was there from the distributional semantics community was a bit. Yeah, it was like, how about we try addition, element-wise addition? Oh, that didn't work for all the cases. How about we try element-wise multiplication? It didn't work for all cases. Like, there was this whole sequence of work. And I was like, well, clearly it's a function. Like, it's a function, takes 2 components and put them to 2 or more components and put them together, like a composition function, right? And the only work that existed really was in the deep learning community. So I jumped the bandwagon around late 2012. And that was exactly the right time to do this. So there we go, screensaver. And I then started digging very early into distributional semantics, composition. I have a couple of papers on that. And later on, I joined UCL for a postdoc, and I worked on essentially bringing deep learning to the proto NLP group here at the time, and moved on. And recently, I've been doing a lot of work on question answering in particular, or rather reading comprehension, which I guess is what it really should be called rather than question answering, where you have a piece of text and you ask an AI to answer questions regarding it. And I feel that that is a nice benchmark currently in NLP, and models do surprisingly well at it and also surprisingly badly, but that's great. That's whenever you do well, there's a reason for praise, and whenever you do badly, there's a reason for more money and future work.
Thanks for sharing that story, Pontus. That's great. And this series is about the UCL AI Centre. I was wondering if you could tell us, what is it like being an academic working within that centre of research?
Oh, well, it's a bit early days, but I'm just very happy that everyone is under the same roof. And it might sound very simple. I mean, maybe someone wanted me to just list all of the amazing other academics, but I mean, they are amazing. But one should not underestimate the value of being inside of the same building and having lunch with different people, overhearing other people's conversations and saying, hey, actually, that's quite related to what I'm doing. Especially as the computer science department is a little bit split between buildings, it's a luxury. So I see amazing things happen just because we sit next to other groups. I see amazing things happen when, say, for example, we are able to invite people from different areas of research into our own lunch meetings and have them present. And I've already seen one paper come out of this, so I'm expecting more. And that, I guess, is the thing that makes me quite happy about the AI Centre in particular. What else is there? I guess also it helps to have a bit of a unified front whenever we meet the public, sharing connections. But in particular, I do think it's actually as simple as just everyone being under the same roof. If you don't trust me, then try it out. I mean, apply or get in and experience being on the same roof. It's freaking amazing.
Great to hear. So in the series, we're talking about future applications or future uses of AI. I was wondering, what most excites you about the future of NLP?
Well, technophobe that I am. No, really, it's amazing. I mean, the most technophobe people I know tend to be computer scientists. What excites me the most in my own area, I really do think that the way that we interact with text and information will change. So I can imagine a future where within the next maybe 3 to 5 years, I don't really like thinking much longer than that because I find it difficult to predict. I think we can actually be in a world where you can have access to textual information and ask questions like, what causes this? Or like, what are the specific connections between this disease and that disease? And almost have like an agent that hopefully runs on your own hardware and you can interact with rather than necessarily being walled off somewhere. And it can give you useful answers and allow you to be more efficient in your work and maybe even make maybe at least assist making scientific discoveries in a very real way. That to me is cool. What we have right now, like I remember being fairly cynical about Amazon Alexa, Google, whatever. I can't remember what the name of all these agents are. I don't use them myself. But I think I've come to accept that they are a natural first step. Like they are the AI glue, like the initial, like this kind of hard-coded, fairly simple, like they're not really exciting to a researcher, but they are a bit of I think of an indication of what might come. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. Like I'm looking forward to having, I think maybe an actual enjoyable, simple conversation with an AI before I die. And I don't think that's necessarily an unrealistic assumption.
Yeah. Fantastic. That is something that may be on the not too distant horizon. Pontus, it was fantastic getting the chance to speak to you today and to learn a little bit more about not only your own research, but the natural language processing group at UCL and within the AI Centre. Thanks very much for giving us your time, and hope to catch up with you really soon.
Yep, likewise. Hope to see everyone in person again under the same roof. All right, take care.
See you soon, Pontus. Thank you.